This next guy is a whopper, man. You guys know him, you love him. We've kept him waiting. I am not going to keep him waiting any longer. If you're still with us in the chat, spike the like button. DC of the Jets. I don't mean Steve Wilkes. Sorry, guys. I mean DomC.
That's right. The
What's up,
DC.
boys? Hey man, sorry I'm late, dude. Just lost a bunch of time. I know you said that there was no real hey, be on by this time, so on and so forth. But then once I tried to get on, I was like, it took me forever. I had to reboot my machine a couple times. It was a pain in the ass, so I apologize, dude.
Same.
So it's
Hey,
all good.
we are no stranger to tech difficulties, man. And honestly, I would 5 minutes at the end of the night, I would take you, Dom. Like you're welcome anytime. you know,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Last time I mentioned it to at least one of you. Like last time you were here, I was not.
hmm
And I appreciate both you guys, man. You gave the crew out there a show when otherwise we wouldn't have had one. So I'm really excited to hear from you tonight because we're 0-6, man.
Yeah,
We
it's rough.
are.
It
It's
is. It is
it's
rough.
it's bad, and not only that, like we are in a fan base that is satisfy me right now. Right now, I need
Yeah,
daily
yeah.
content. I need it daily everything. And when it's 0-6, man, it's a lot of daily crap
Yeah,
stats.
I think that's a good point to hammer home is that everyone wants what they want and wants what they want now. You know what I mean? That God forbid, you talk about developing anything. Whether it's a quarterback, whether it's an offensive line, whether it's a coach, whether it's this, that, the other thing. There's almost no room for that kind of stuff anymore. And again, I don't say that in terms of like being the biggest or staunchest, supporter of Aaron Glenn because, I think he's reaped what he's sowed, unfortunately a little bit here. But yeah, man, we're in a world of what have you done for me lately? And it's not a good look, not a good look. It's the way that this has started for the team, for the regime, for everything. So, it is what it is. The reality, my reality is I've gone into every one of these games outside of Buffalo. I've gone into every one of these games outside of Buffalo and maybe Denver. Definitely Buffalo, maybe Denver. Really feeling like, all right, well, we can get a win. We really can. And that's not green goggles or something like that. Like it's just, there's been a little bit of me that says, yeah, we can win this game. And then we come out and proceed to lose it in a fashion that I never imagined. Buffalo, I knew we were cooked. And that game was the ugliest one yet. And then the Denver game, I had no hope. All my hope was broken from the previous 2 weeks, and we came out and we won two of the three sides of the ball that we needed to, and the defense and the special teams, and couldn't do it offensively. So so I'm back on thinking like there's got to be a way. After watching that offense last week, you would think that that's just the homer in me that's saying we got a chance, but there's something in me that thinks that you still got a chance. Still got a chance to win a game here against Carolina on Sunday at home. It should be a game that we're in. Again, I have no expectations whatsoever. The first 6 games have kind of drained all that from me. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low. It just is what it's going to be.
You have to learn. How many times do we get beaten to a pulp where we got to expect a punch?
Yeah, right.
But go ahead, Murph.
I was just. It's so hard, man. Dom, like watching the game, like we're all Jets fans. And that whole try not to get too low thing, like I can handle the try not to get too high, but the try not to get too low is really rough, especially when you're watching Justin Fields take as many sacks as he gets completions in a game. That's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And that game just happens to happen when our defense holds the opposing team to 13 points. So Yeah, and you
Yeah.
kind of mentioned it earlier, dude. Like we're losing in any which way you can think of.
Well,
It's not just getting blown out every time. It's not gritty games every time.
yeah.
A little bit of everything.
It is I mean, crazy stat maybe, maybe something that only like the nerdiest of nerds would dig up, but I did read it somewhere on X that teams that won the playoff or won the turnover battle and held the opposing team to less than 250 yards of total offense are like 62-0 or something like that until last week.
How many weeks
Breaking
do I have to
records.
hear, dude? We heard that stat too. Like, well, not the same one, but a similar, long-standing record. We lost, like, I swear, a month ago. Very similar. Like, we are just, rewriting the record books this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So
But that segues us kind of to having you on.
uh-huh.
And we all still have aspirations of going 11-6, right? So what the odds that the small sliver of a chance that we don't go 11-6 makes me want to pick your brain, Dom, because the small chance. Last Saturday, man, I'm in Oregon, as you guys know. Been watching the Ducks for 2 years straight now, man. Saw Dylan Gabriel play well for them last year. Didn't want to draft him. Let's not go that far. But now he's looking better than Fields, and he was right under my nose. Now Dante Moore is under
Uh-huh.
my nose, and I think I'm kind of higher on him than I should be because it's like an overcorrect of Gabriel. Now I'm like super in love with Moore. Well, we all kind of watched him last week, I think. We watched him play against a guy you love.
Mm.
Can you start there? Because I think a lot of people in the chat probably watched that game too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think for all of whatever 7 weeks we are in college football so far this week, I think the most enticing game that we've saw, forget about the teams that were playing, even though they were two, top 10 ranked teams, was the matchup of Dante Moore versus Fernando Mendoza in Indiana and Oregon. And I don't know if it lived up to anything. It wasn't the craziest shootout per se, like mano a mano duel between the two quarterbacks, but I think you got to see a lot of what anyone hoped to see from both quarterbacks. And you start with we'll start with your guy Dino and Dante Moore. Listen, I'll say this: I like this. I like this kid a lot. I like his build. At 6'3", I think he's got room to add size to his frame. I think he can use a little bit more. A little bit more time with an NFL, trainer in the weight room, and he can probably, they list him at 205. I doubt he's that. I doubt he's 205. I'd probably say he could probably carry a good 215 or 220, but that's adding 15 or 20 pounds to him. But he's got the frame to do it. You have, just a really loose thrower of the football. And what I mean by loose is like it doesn't look like there's no labor. Like the mechanical aspect of throwing the football is no labor. It looks like it just goes in his arm and shoots out in this perfect little pretty spiral, like he's Bob fucking Ross, just dotting things left and right. I love the way he pushes the ball vertically. I really like the way he plays off platform, meaning in designed rollouts and stuff like that. He's athletic. He's not a dual threat quarterback, but he's athletic enough to hurt with his legs. You talk about a kid at 20, he'll be 21 by the time the draft comes around. You talk about a kid who's as cool, calm, and collected as there is. Like, he's got like, maybe I'm dating myself. You guys ever see the movie Rounders? The poker movie? You know,
Great movie.
yeah, he's got alligator blood. That's what I say with Dante Moore. He's got alligator blood in his, just
Hey,
pumping
Dom.
through him, dude. Yes, sir.
Dom,
Yes, sir.
if I had no context to this and I didn't know who you were talking about,
Mhm.
and tell me if I'm crazy, but and this probably going to sound bad because he's not having a good year in the NFL, but that everything you're describing sounds like Cam Ward to me.
Yeah. You know what?
Like,
It's not.
and
That's
he
not
went
the
number
worst.
one overall, so there's
Yeah.
something to be said there. I mean,
Absolutely not the worst. Eval or comparison that I've heard. I think that Cam Ward's a little bit more even athletic.
yeah. I was just like
But in terms of the way he
loose.
moves, the way he glides, in terms of the way he just, he throws the ball so effortlessly and with such whip, coming from, from the ground, you watch his feet always matching his eyes, and again, it's something that I always look for is, when you're watching a quarterback throw, you watch them in a straight drop back. And I'm talking not like when they're rolling out or they got pressure coming at them, but you're talking about like clean pocket, straight 5-step drop back. You want to watch from the ground up, right? And you want to see that the feet are kind of aligned with the knees and the hips, which are dead aligned with his eyes, because that's how you know that he can really step into it and get everything to it. And it seems like Dante Moore just has that, like, really, really smooth all the time. So, like very, very mechanically sound. You know, definitely has some room to grow. The thing that the area that I would like to see him like improve a little bit more. He's still young. He's still a little bit cavalier, so he's got a little bit. Sometimes he pushes a little way too hard, like and puts the ball in harm's way where it doesn't need to be. But I think that's just maturity. The big knock on him, he just hasn't had a lot of starts, So he's a moldable ball of clay, that the right offensive mind and the right coach and the right coordinator can kind of get him. And, I think he can fit a numerous different offenses, but you can really get him and coach him up and really have that super unknown high ceiling in a guy like Dante Moore, who's just going to be 21 years old at the end of the draft, and then you got, his opponent in that game, Fernando Mendoza, who, to me epitomizes what an NFL quarterback, aspires to be, and it's crazy that I'm saying that for a 22-year-old kid. But when you talk about like fundamentally sound, he checks that mark. When you talk about like the physicality, the physical aspect of him, 6'5", 235 pounds, can see the entire field. He checks that box. You talk about an above average to almost elite arm. I'm not going to say it's like Jeff George elite, but he's got a really, really strong arm. He checks that box. You talk about the ability to, layer the ball over the second level, or fire it into an NFL open window in front of a safety, throw with anticipation on an outbreaking back shoulder pass or something like that. Like, he puts the ball exactly where it's got to be. The accuracy outside of maybe Darian Mensah is second to none in this league. But the thing that wins me over with Fernando Mendoza, and why I've been in love with him for since the summer, since I really, really delved into his Cal tape from last year. Two things. One, you just see how smart of a quarterback he is, right? The ability to progress, the ability to understand what he's looking at pre and post snap, the ability to make the adjustments. He had this throw when he was at Cal. I believe he was playing Stanford. I can look it up. Correct me if I'm wrong. But man, I looked at that throw and I said, this kid's going to be an NFL quarterback. He progressed to 1 to 2 across the field to his third receiver. Nothing was there. Kind of regrouped, reset his feet, turned back to the 1, and fired a dot into a tiny, tiny window where only his receiver could get the ball. It was either going to be an incompletion or his receiver is going to make the ball. and his receiver made the catch. And I knew right then and there that this kid was going to be something special. He does a lot of things that you like to see. He's not afraid to turn his back to the line. And what do I mean by that? Like you watch. I mean, we all watched Aaron Rodgers, right? We all watched Aaron Rodgers here for a year, and I'm sure we've watched Aaron Rodgers, year in and year out before, when he was with Green Bay. And it's not just him, but I think he's the most recent example. When you watch these play action fakes and you watch Aaron Rodgers turn his back to the line to really sell it and then come back, kind of know how to establish where he's, what's going on in the defense and turn, step, set, and fire. Like Fernando Mendoza has that. It's these little innate things, that is really, really high level processing that he's able to do at 22 years old, which makes me think that he's going to be a really, really good quarterback in the NFL. Now, is he as physically gifted as Dante Moore even? Probably not. Probably not. Do I think that it's the worst thing in the world to say, I'm willing to hitch my wagon to this guy who I know whose floor is going to be super high. And his ceiling might be very good. His ceiling might not be gold jacket good, but who knows? He's still only 22, still can develop. His ceiling might be top 10 to 12 quarterback in the league. I know a lot of people have said Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff's fair. I think Matt Ryan is fair comp to him.
Kirk Cousins.
I think Trevor Lawrence. I see a lot of Trevor Lawrence in his game. Just that sneaky athleticism. That ability to being a kind of a bigger, taller, lankier guy. A good arm ability to throw any ball. The way he sells off safeties with his eyes and stuff like that. So that type of guy. Is that the worst thing in the world if you hit your wagon to that, considering where we've been the past 14 years?
I'm over the whole, we need our quarterbacks to be, supreme athletes anyway. I don't need that out of a quarterback. I need a quarterback that can read a defense and throw the damn ball on time with accuracy. That's what I need. Yeah. I need Chad Pennington, God damn it.
Yeah. No, and listen, you talk about, and I'm with you, Murph. I'm all about the cerebral player more so than I am the physical stud. Especially at the, maybe not a tackle, maybe a tackle. Give me the biggest, strongest, dumbest motherfucker out there. I'm sorry. I can
let it loose.
All right. Yeah. Maybe an offensive guard or something like that. Give me the big dumb guy, defensive tackle. But at quarterback, I want a guy who's going to outthink you, And the best example of that guy is, maybe the best quarterback that we've ever seen play in our time, right? Tom Brady. Tom Brady he wasn't physically better than anybody. He wasn't more athletic than anybody, but he was smarter than most of you. He was smarter than most defenses, and he studied his ass off, and he knew what was going on the defense more so than the defense knew what was going on in the defense, and he knew how to beat it.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
The New York Jets draft Mendoza, and you see him play for us.
Mm-hmm.
Finish this sentence. Mendoza processes the field better than any New York Jet quarterback since blank, not counting Rodgers.
Easily Chad Pennington. I think I think he's Chad Pennington-esque in that sense, and that's disrespect to Chad, because I think Chad was one of the most cerebral quarterbacks that I've ever seen play, let alone as for the Jet. There's Peyton Manning, there's Tom Brady, there's Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck's of the world. And I don't think, in terms of that aspect of the game, I don't think Chad Pennington's far off from that. Chad Pennington just had tons of physical limitations because of the shoulder injuries and so on and so forth. But he was about as smart of a quarterback and as cerebral of an understanding of the game of football as there was who's ever played.
Over Fitz, though.
Definitely over Fitz.
Good job.
Fitz is a bit of a gunslinger.
Listen, it's hard to say that because Fitz played however many years. Fitz played 15 years in the league, so it's hard to say that. But like, that's how confident I am in this kid. I really am, and I know he's the hot name, guys. But I think you guys, know where I'm coming from when I say I don't stake my, I'm not trying to plant my flag and say I saw him first, but I can assure you, and I think you guys know me by now. I'm not just running with a hot name, like if I'm gonna vouch for somebody, I've done my work and my necessary research on the player, and like I said, he caught my eye. He wasn't my favorite quarterback coming out of last season, but coming into the summer, I heard a bunch about him, so I delved into him because I didn't watch a lot of him last year, and I was floored, man. I was absolutely floored. And I just wanted to watch. I just wanted to keep watching more and more of him. And the thing that I love, and then I'll shut up about Mendoza, is last year at Cal was a great year, but it wasn't perfect in the least. I mean, he took 41 sacks. That the offensive line was awful. You watch him at sometimes, trying to do too much. Like we talk about what Dante Moore is doing now. Like sometimes those turnover-worthy throws are too much. You're putting the ball in harm's way. I think he fumbled. I think Mendoza fumbled like 8 times last year. Like, just doing too much outside of the pocket. But you watched that change, and you could identify that as an issue that he needed to improve on. And coming into this year, he's improved on it. So that is the stuff that I look for when I'm going from last year to this year. Are the players making the necessary improvements that you see or that you feel they need to make? And Mendoza's checking all those boxes, brother.
Also, not to mention, different system and stuff, takes it in stride, keeps going, builds on the momentum. I like seeing that. I want to kind of parlay this Mendoza, and you can even bring up more too. Our good buddy Matt Mackle in the chat is he wants to get onto some Angstrand here or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel how do you feel Mendoza or more would look in an Angstrand offense? And I know we're only 6 games into it, but I know you see things that I don't see when it comes to how these plays are going on the field and stuff. So just based on what we're seeing out of Angstrand and the type of offense he likes to run, do you think either of those guys are going to fit?
Yeah. So I'm going to say this about Tanner Angstrand.
Also, give me a vibe check too on Angstrand when you're done with that too.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with that because I'm good on Angstrand. I'm good on Tanner Angstrand. Do I think it's been perfect over 6 games? No, it hasn't been perfect, but he's a first-time coordinator. If I got to knock him for anything, a couple things, I think it's fair criticism. I don't think it's bad criticism, but I think it's fair criticism. I think that, you'd like to – I want to see him develop, the game plan, like kind of layer it a little bit more, like set things up. You know what I mean? Now, we've been getting our asses kicked in most of the games, for the first 3 quarters. So maybe he hasn't had a chance to set things up, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of flow. And it seems like things are very predictable. Now, it very well could be just circumstance that we're in. You're down 30-3 or, like 30-10 or something like that. Well, you know what? You're going to line up, you're going to go, 11 personnel 4 wide or something like that. And because you have to throw the ball, doesn't give you a chance to kind of, use a formation that you ran off of last time to run play action this time because they're thinking you're seeing A and it's really B. So, so I'd like to see a little bit more unpredictability in his play calling, and I'd like to see a little bit quicker adjustments. There seems to be times where, like I said, Buffalo game, perfect example. Anytime we brought on 2 tight ends or more onto the field, we got our asses run blitzed. They blitzed 5, they blitzed, or they brought 5 or 6 and filled every gap, and we just didn't adjust from that. You know what I mean? All we did is just try, we kept the blocker in and ran a 2-man route or something like that. It just the adjustments weren't there. But schematically he's getting guys open, and he's getting, the Josh Reynolds and the Tyler Johnsons of the world open. You know what I mean? Could there be a little bit more, creativity or flow to the way he's calling a game? I think so, but some of that might just be the circumstances that our offense has been in and the limitations of the quarterback. Let's call it what it is. I'm fine on Engstrand. I'm not sour on him. I'll say this: he hasn't been perfect, but I think he's the least of the worries right now on the team, on the 0-6 New York Jets. But you remember his offense. Everyone wants to kind of force the square peg of Tanner Engstrand into the round hole of Ben Johnson, but that's not the case. Engstrand doesn't run Ben Johnson's offense. Engstrand runs a more of a traditional West Coast offense, right? Horizontal patterns. You're going to see a lot of mesh, a lot of crossing, a lot of a lot of hitches against too high, and a lot of out routes, up routes against single high, shot plays and stuff like that. And I think that either quarterback could fit. We're talking about these two quarterbacks in particular. I think that Mendoza would do, and more for that matter, because I think that Mendoza more so than more with the accuracy and the play and the ball placement is really, really elite. More is good, has some room for improvement, but that horizontal flowing offensive style will do both of them good. So I think they can both fit. I know that there's some, Engstrom says he wants to run some RPO, even though the past 3 weeks we haven't seen much of it. Indiana runs a lot of RPO. Obviously, Oregon runs a lot of everything. So both of those guys, I think could do it. I don't think either of them are true threats with their legs, but they're kind of like that, Daniel Jones, sneaky, nerdy, athletic. You know what I mean? Like you don't expect them to bother you, but you turn around and they're gaining. They got 12 carries for 80 yards all of a sudden. So yes, I think they can both fit the Engstrand offense.
Before we go to some other prospects, we just chomped on the bit when it comes to Engstrand, this regime we have. Dom, I want to ask you about the topic of the week real quick, and I just want a short answer out of you. I don't want an essay. Thoughts on your 6-week assessment. Can you trust this regime to make our franchise quarterback pick next year?
Short answer, I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to have a choice. I think
you're not wrong.
I think they're going to be here. So, and I think you have to, if you're going to be in picking, I think they're going to be allowed to pick their quarterback. I think if you're picking that high, you're going to need a quarterback. So I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Yeah. Assuming we don't go 11-6, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Moving along, though, I know you came chomping at the bit. You wanted to talk quarterbacks and wide receivers.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to leave it up to you, man. How you want?
Whatever you want to listen, man. Whatever you guys want, your show. I'm just here for the ride, man.
Well, we do have some questions.
Shoot.
They wanted to a couple things. We got some memberships and stuff I want to get to, but Chris B wanted to know, what are your thoughts about disguising our blitzes better and more often to get home and cause havoc?
Yeah. So it's funny. It's a good question, Chris. Because the one thing that we were kind of sold the bill of goods on with oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? Who's our defense coordinator?
Wilkes.
Shit, Steve Wilkes, yeah. And not even like sold the bill of goods, but like the stuff that he did in previous regimes where he's been at, even in preseason, in training camp, you saw a lot of, sim pressure, disguised blitzes coming from every angle, so on and so forth. I think he's just we've hit the point where a couple things have happened, Chris. This is my opinion. One, I think he realizes that the personnel isn't really all that good. Two, the injuries aren't helping much, especially the injuries that we've had in the middle of the field, at the linebacker position, so on and so forth. With Quincy and Marcelino McCurry-Ball, who is playing a lot of defensive snaps, not being there, that kind of hurts. And three, I think they've definitely realized, because there's been a real shift over the past 2 weeks, that, like stepping up and coming and press man coverage, cover 0, cover 1 right across the board, and just manning up across the board isn't working for them. They're getting toasted. So they're playing a lot more zone. So it's harder to do what he really wants to do when, he's not really playing the defense that he wants to play. Now, kudos to him for adjusting. You know what I mean? But you're going to have some guys coming back. I know my MC2 is coming back this week. I think with the addition of Jarvis Brownlee, you're going to have some looks where maybe you can show something else and disguise it and bring something else. But yeah, man, offensive and defensive have been very, very predictable. We line up defensively, and the quarterbacks know exactly what's going on. They're not dumb. We're showing something, and they know, okay, they're in a too deep, they're in a too high shell, so we'll put our zone beater in. And okay, they're look, single highs back there, they're man across, we'll put our man beaters in. They just check off the plays and so on and so forth.
How much do you think MC2's performance through the first 5 weeks or so impacted what Wilkes has wanted to do?
I think he's been one of the big culprits. I don't think call it what it is. Just again, going to keep it real. I think that he's arguably, I'd say it's a toss up between him or Michael Clemens on who's been the worst defender through the first 6 games. Now, Michael Carter didn't play last game, so maybe he gets a reprieve there. But the first 5 games at least, I think it's a toss up. Everyone wants to say Stevens. I don't necessarily think. I think Stevens had the worst first game, but I think that Michael Carter, I think Michael Clemens, and I think Andre Cisco and Tony Adams have all played worse than Brandon Stevens. And if we can sit here and keep reeling off names like that in the backside of our defense, you're up shit's creek. Right?
Yeah, and honestly, he started off rough. Right, he started off pretty rough, and I feel like these last 2-3 weeks he's tightened it up a lot. And he's played with a lot of fire, and it's like he's like, okay, I need to get my shit together. Almost,
who's that? Clemens?
That's what it feels like. No, Brandon Stevens.
Oh yeah. Listen, he's I'm never gonna get on a cornerback. I'm never gonna get on a DB for losing a rep. Like, people don't realize that that's probably the hardest position to play in the NFL. Everyone's going to say, "Oh, quarterback is this, that." No, it's DB, man. Because you're asked to mirror and stick to a guy who's got all the advantages in the world, knows exactly what the play is, knows exactly where his break is, has a two-way break, and you can't put hands on him past a certain point, this, that, and the other thing. So playing corner is the hardest position in the NFL, I believe. And so I'm not going to really, get on a guy for losing reps, here or there. What I think you've seen over the past couple weeks is you've really seen him turn on and how he can really affect the game and with his physicality, right? He's getting a little bit tougher in press and jamming the guys and not letting them get off, which has helped him on the back end in the recovery aspect of it. And he's really, really, he's probably the best tackler out of the back, on the back 7. Outside of Sherwood, obviously, but maybe second best tackler or the best tackler out of the defensive backs is, he sticks his nose in there and makes tackles, doesn't miss a lot of tackles, so on and so forth. Not afraid to get his hands dirty in that aspect. So, Stevens, had a bad first game for sure, and I think you can make a fair argument to say that he might be the reason we lost that first game, right? If he just stays on his feet, catches that interception, they never drive that last drive, and we get away with the win, and we're having a whole different conversation, I'm sure. than we are
We
right
are.
now. But
We are. Dom, let me give you some feedback. Jake chimed in earlier. He's saying that you made him like Dante Moore even more. He says he doesn't watch everything he does. Clean pockets are tough in New York, though. And then I want to go to Mendoza feedback. Anthony from the Jets Life podcast says that good evening. He says he loves your report on Mendoza.
thank
He
you.
himself has watched 8 of his games the last 2 weeks, and Mendoza looks like the top guy for him as well. Let me ask you this, Dom, because I know the way this is going to go the next 6 months. People are going to fall in love with one or the other, or a third party that we're going to get to next. Do you think we can go wrong picking either guy? Because honestly, listening to you talk about both of them, I feel like either one is going to be a decent pick.
I think there's right now on October, what is it, the 17th? I think on October 17th right now, I think there's 5 players, 5, who are in line to be the number 1 overall pick, right? I think one of them is Ruben Bain, the defensive end from Miami. No, I don't know if the Jets will pass on a quarterback if they're picking one, but I'm giving you the honest opinion on who I think can go number 1, right? I think there's Ruben Bain, and then the other 4 quarterbacks. I think Mendoza's name's in the equation. I think Lenora Seller's name is still in the equation, even though he wouldn't be mine. It wouldn't be that equation wouldn't be mine, but people are gonna, NFL teams fall in love with traits, man, and he's got them. He's got the goods. And I think Dante Moore and Ty Simpson are going to be, in the equation. And both of those guys are quarterbacks who, kind of check a lot of boxes, but for me, miss and I can't really talk about Ty Simpson because I have not finished his evaluation. I've only gotten a game and a half in to what he's had. He hasn't started games prior to this year, so so I have to hold my judgment for that. But from what I understand and from what the people who have really, really delved into the kid seem to think that he's got a chance to be the number 1 overall pick, especially if he wins the Heisman. And he's on the trajectory where right now it's probably him or Mendoza win the Heisman. So I think those 4 guys or those 5 guys for all different reasons have a chance to be the number 1 pick. Now, Moore or Simpson are less. Moore is probably less likely, and I'd say Moore is probably less likely because if I had to bet the money in my pocket right now, I'd say he's going back to school. He only had 6 starts at UCLA before taking, in essence, a second red shirt to sit behind Dylan Gabriel last year. To this year, if he gets 11 starts, that's just not enough. He'll only be 21. Next year will be 22. That's the perfect age for a quarterback. 22 is the perfect age for a quarterback. And Simpson will be a little bit older. Simpson will be 23. And again, you're banking on a one-hit wonder, a one-year wonder, I should say. And us who remember the years of Mark Sanchez, knows what happened, or Sam Darnold, knows what happened with those one-year wonders. Now, Sammy's turned out great 9 years later, 7 years later, 8 years later, right, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And maybe Ty Simpson will do the same thing. But are you willing to hitch your wagon to a guy who's only started 11 games in college? I'm not.
Dom, I actually had this conversation with Dane in the group chat the other day. We were talking Dante Moore and stuff like that, and I was like, man, I really struggle to hit, like you said, hitch my wagon to a quarterback that has that flash in the pan season 1 year. I said, unless it's Joe Burrow-esque. Yeah, like that's the only time it's got to be that incredible for me to be.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Can I tell Dom my answer though to that?
Go ahead.
And I'm not saying that means we should pick Dante Moore, but what I'm saying, like, I had a response to why I think Moore could come out being such a short sample size. They have Achilles Smith Jr. behind him. And I think they really love that kid. I mean, we all seen his dad.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Kind
remember
of
when his
fit.
dad was drafted. You guys
Same
were probably
here.
too young. You guys were probably too
No,
young for it.
I do. He busted, if you ask me. But this
He
kid's
sure
got a
did, man.
he's got a big arm, true freshman. Now, can they still get another year out of Moore and then go to him? Yeah, sure they can, but at the same time, man, if Oregon wins out and their schedule isn't too bad, like look at Aller. He should have came out last year. He stuck around and his stock's plummeting. I'm just saying, like, if Achilles Smith Jr. was not behind him, I'd say, yeah, I'm not even looking at him. But the fact that he is makes me think, 50-50, depending on how they win out, how
Yeah,
they,
but Dano, you also gotta remember this, brother. The year of the portal. I mean, the day and age of the portal, man. Like people change schools like they change underwear, right? And I'll tell you
good,
this:
good
if
point.
I'll tell you this, I don't care what you say. I tweeted this earlier. I watched that game. That I don't know if you guys watched any of the Louisville and Miami game, but if I'm a quarterback and I want to make a name for myself, um, and I want NIL money, you can pay me to go down to South Florida and throw balls to Malachi Tony at the U for the next year or so. And I'd be just happy doing that. You know what I mean? Now Beck didn't have a
This,
great game today. In the least, he had a pretty bad game today, but he's had a rejuvenated season this year before today's game, and you saw what they did with Cam Ward there last year. And now they got the receivers. This kid Tony's going to be really, really special. Like, sign me up for that. So, to your Achilles Smith Jr. point, in the day and age of the transfer portal, I don't think it matters.
Thank you. I needed to hear that. Um, something that Wild Wave needs to hear is your answer to this question. Look at that
Okay.
segue. He says, getting straight to the point, Dom. He's not playing around. Would it make sense to trade back and grab a haul and select a blue chipper and draft a
Excuse me.
developmental guy in the second? This class is quantity over quality. Thoughts?
Well, there's a couple ways to go about this, Dano, and Wild Wave for that matter. One, I'll say that I don't think that the Jets are a quarterback away from really, really taking that next step. I think there's a lot of places and improvements that need to be, holes that need to be filled. However, on that same token, how many times do you get a chance to really, have the pick of the litter of your guy now? And we don't know if they're going to end up with the first overall pick, but anywhere in the top three, just we named two or three quarterbacks. I don't think all two or three quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3. So like you don't get that opportunity too often. If you told me that you were dead set on one guy and the rest of them you really didn't care about, then yes, I guess you can consider that. But you better sell me, and you better sell the franchise, and you better sell, the fans and the front office alike on what your solution is going to be at quarterback, right? Because you can't tell me, Wild Wave, that I'm going to trade back. I'm going to take the Godfather deal that San Francisco offered us for Zach Wilson back in 2020. 3 first-round picks to move back to whatever, and you can't tell me that you're going to do that, and I'm going to start Justin Fields again. That just ain't going to work. You know what I mean? It just ain't going to work. Although I don't think we're a quarterback away, I think the most important position that we have to figure out is the quarterback.
I'm just going to say it right here. This is my opinion, but I'm going to speak it as if it's law because that's what I do. Because why the fuck not? If you are not a quarterback away and you determine that your team isn't, but you're in the position to take a top tier quarterback in the draft, you fucking take him anyway, and then you sit him. Why not let him develop for a year while you figure the rest of your team out? You're getting the best of both worlds. You're not throwing him into the fire with a team that's not ready to have him, and you're developing him for a year, letting him sit and let the game slow down, because that's one of the biggest problems for these guys when they come into the league. Like, the game is just too fast for them.
That's
They
right.
need to sit and let that game slow down. Let them get used to seeing these players, these high top tier quality dudes. Like, everybody in the NFL is fucking good. Okay, even the worst guys are good. You know, it's the best of the best. In college, it's not always the best of the best. Like, when these guys are playing for Miami or Alabama or Texas or whatever, and they're playing UTSA or something, yeah, they're lighting it up because every one of their guys is much faster than every one of their guys. Like, it's just, anyway. What I'm saying is, even if you think you're a quarterback, if you're even if you're not a quarterback away, if you're in that position, you take them anyway and sit them. And honestly, you should probably sit a guy anyway. But that's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, and Wild Wave also, like, to be honest, like, this class per se, you know, isn't really the strongest. You know what I mean? Like, it won't surprise me if, you know, this class has more than a dozen, only has about a dozen first round grades. I only have about a dozen first round grades when it's all said and done. You know, very similar to the Will McDonald year. What year was that? 2023? 22? Well, whatever that year is.
23.
Yeah, it was 2023. That draft class was not not particularly strong. And this class has a lot of similarities in terms of that, you know. So there might only be, you know, teams might only have 9, 10, 12 first round grades, and then everything else is just like a reach, or, you know, could be considered a reach, you know, as Will McDonald was, you know, when we took him at 15, you know, and he's developed nicely and, you know, kind of stagnant this year, you know, even though, you know, if you look past the stats, he's actually not playing bad at all. And you know, is really suffering from the lack of support on the back end of our defense. You know what I mean?
What do you
So
think a defensive end room of Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, and Ruben Bain would look like, Dom?
that would look, excuse me, that would look just dandy. That would look just dandy. Although, you know, I think that, you know, Ruben Bain is arguably the best player in college football right now. I think it's fair to say that he's, you know, in the discussion. Um, but he's not, you know, like, he's dominating college football right now, but I don't think he's the most dominant player that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Like, Myles Garrett is one of one, right? And Ruben Bain at 6'6", 270, you know, it's got all the physical aspects of Myles Garrett. And he might be dominating the stat line like Myles Garrett was, but, you know, he's not nearly even close to where Myles Garrett was coming out of, out of college and in his first year in the NFL. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if Bain's more Jermaine Johnson than he is Myles Garrett, you know, where he's a really, really staunch, tough edge rusher, you know, who can win with physicality, win with that power rush, so on and so forth. You know, he's not a bendy, kind of, very limber or fast twitch kind of athlete. You know, he's kind of like a bull in a china shop. I'm not going to worry about, you know, hand fighting and getting around you. I'm gonna go right through his fucking chest. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go right through your chest. That's the kind of guy he is. But yes, I'd be just fine with that, Dano, especially because, you know, Jermaine and Will are probably 1 year and 2 years left, you know, between the two of them. My guess is that you'll re-sign one of them or extend one of them and let the other one kind of ride off into the sunset. So you're going to need a defensive end at some point anyway. So if it's Ruben Bain, it's Ruben Bain. However, you better sell me on who you got as quarterback if you can take Ruben Bain in the first round.
Quick hitters, Dom.
Shoot.
Can you talk Caleb Downs and Mateer?
I'll talk Mateer first. I love the kid. I do. Now, Mateer might be one of those guys who is is a better college football player than he ever ends up being a pro. If I had to put him in a trajectory, that's where I'd say. But there's some of those guys which just surprise the hell out of you, and come out of nowhere. Listen, there's no denying Mateer's arm talent is special. There's no denying he is a top tier athlete who can hurt you with his legs as well. And there's no denying that guy has brass motherfucking balls and does it and gives zero fucks. Yes, he's as tough as they come, physically. He's as tough as they come mentally. And his attitude while he's playing the position of quarterback will tell you he doesn't give a fuck. He goes at it. He is a gunslinger, like gunslingers are no more. Like a lot of people have likened him. I think his game style is more Kyler Murray. And a lot of that is the way he plays and the agility that he plays with and the arm talent that he plays with. He's very small, like Kyler in height. He's only 6 feet tall. But he's 226 pounds, so he's a lot more stocky, a lot more physically imposing than Kyler is. But I've heard a lot of people liken him to Baker Mayfield, and I just think that's like the moxie and and that cavalier attitude that he plays with. That's a lot like Baker Mayfield, and it works for Baker. Some people think it's working or it will work for Jackson Dart to play like that as well. I will hold my reservation on that personally, but because I'm no way, shape, or form gonna put Jackson Dart and Baker Mayfield in the same realm right now. So I think Mateer could get up to that point. I think he could get. I think he really, really could develop to that. The better scenario or bigger kind of higher percentage case scenario, I should say, is that he ends up being a long-term backup that comes in and can win a game or two with his legs and with his heart, when he's asked to. So that's Mateer. Now, who was the other one? Caleb Downs you talked about? Listen, I love safeties, and Caleb Downs is probably one. He's super versatile, probably the most complete safety product that we've seen since Kyle Hamilton. You're talking about five-star guy, started at Alabama, transferred to Ohio State, has just gotten better. Super, super high-end athlete. Really, really good playing downhill, closing speed, so on and so forth. I think he's super versatile. You can play him in the box. You can play him in the overhang. You can play him deep. But the way that fast twitch muscles, that fast twitch kind of style of play where he can just plant and break. Like I like him even to be like kind of like a rover, that star backer where he's playing a little bit of nickel and a little bit of linebacker and a little bit of in the post safety. Super, super, super talented. I think the thing that will kill him is he's gonna have to test really high in terms of like the 40 speed and stuff like that. I don't know if he's going to be an elite runner of that sense. Like his trail, like his makeup speed isn't the greatest. And it hurt Kyle Hamilton. If you remember when Kyle Hamilton came out, he ran a 4.7. But you watch him play and he's like, man, that guy's faster than 4.7. He doesn't play like he's 4.7. And I think that's a lot like Caleb Downs is going to be now. Caleb Downs is not as physically imposing as Kyle Hamilton, right? He's only 6 feet tall. He's only 200 pounds. But he can come down and he can lay the wood, man. He can give you a lick coming downhill. Big physical guy. He's agile enough to play and hang with guys in the slot. I think that maybe that Brian Branch role is going to be what suits him best at the next level. I don't have him. I know a lot of people talk about him as a blue chip, can't miss, top of the draft guy. He'll probably be in the top in my top 10, but I don't see him as a blue chip. I don't see him as he's not the prospect that Kyle Hamilton was for me. And I love safeties. So saying that hurts a little bit.
Couple questions from the chat, unless you
Yeah.
got something real quick, Murph.
No, I was
Okay,
I was just listening to Dom Cook. I like hearing him talk good about Ohio State guys. So 'cause I don't hear about
yeah.
WVU guys very much. So.
Yeah.
Jake wants to know, he's not sure if you got a super chat question. I didn't see it either. I don't know if it went through, but I think he wants to know about your thoughts on AZ Thomas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, listen, AZ Thomas was he was my third ranked cornerback in the entire class last year. He was my 17th overall prospect. I thought there was no fit better for what I assumed or I laid out what Aaron Glenn wanted on his defense than AZ Thomas. When you talk about size at 6'1.5", when you talk about arm length, when you talk about physicality, when you talk about ability to press, play press man, when you talk about the ability to to fill and get his head in there and tackle in the perimeter. The way he can go up and attack the ball and turn the ball over. That's all AZ Thomas, man. He was one of my favorite prospects last year. He still stays one of my favorite prospects that came out of class last year. He hasn't gotten his chance to shine yet. I don't think that's far off. I think it's coming. I do. So.
One thing I asked the chat about was, because I am literally clueless when it comes to wide receivers.
Uh-huh.
We can just let you riff on a couple of them, but Rich Sports Talk, who I believe we both know, he chimed in and he said, Ian Strong, second round out of Rutgers, big possession receiver, nice compliment to Wilson. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know if he is. Well, he's a big possession type receiver. I don't know if he's a second round guy. And I don't have I don't have a full eval on him yet. He's big. I don't know if he's going to get into the second round. Like, there's just limitations to what he can do athletically, for sure.
And we don't have a third either. So
yeah, we don't have a third. Not yet. I think that's in the works. Whether it's a trade that's coming down the pike or listen, we have 10 draft picks next year. When it's all said and done, after the comp picks will be assigned, we have 10 draft picks next year. 8 of those are on day 3. You're going to see some of those. You're going to see some of those moved up to move into the third round if you need to. But yeah, the kid from Rutgers, I don't know if I'm there with him yet. If you're talking big-bodied X prototypes, like you watch it in Louisville today. You know what I mean? You watch DK Metcalf Jr. playing Chris Bell. 6'3", 205 pounds. Fast, gonna be a 4-4 guy, super physical, knows how to catch, strong, knows how to catch the ball. Like I said, he's built like DK, and really, I think his game resembles DK a whole heck of a lot because it's mostly, it's not full route tree stuff, but what he does very, very, very good. So Chris Bell, yeah, I think Chris Bell's more of a top 50 guy, so I think you can sit him there. You can kind of sit there and hope he lands here at the top of the second round. You talk about other big guys. Chris Brazzell from Tennessee, another guy, 6'5", 200. He might be, be more of a stretch X or a vertical X like Alec Pierce is in Indianapolis. Like, big guy that runs straight. He's not necessarily your possession receiver. Elijah Surratt, very familiar with Fernando Mendoza in Indiana. Another big X prototype kind of receiver.
Oh,
Um,
dude, he cooked us, man.
yeah,
Like
Colby Young
we
in Georgia. I mean, there's tons of if that's what you're looking for. If that's the yin that you want to the yang of Garrett Wilson, then there's tons of those guys in this draft.
Jeremiah Smith, what's the story there? Because I mean, I feel
He's
like if
not.
he was coming out, he'd be number one.
He is not coming out, and he would be number one overall. He's not draft eligible yet.
Got you. I knew there was a story there. Let me see. There was some other ones.
Well, I mean, I think the three biggest. I mean, Chris Bell is a guy that I happen to really like a lot. Jordan Tyson, the kid out of Arizona State, he might just be the best receiver that's come out in the past couple years, maybe since Garrett Wilson's year.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say that. I'm sorry. Malik Neighbors is better than him. And I graded Malik Neighbors higher than him. So that's a stretch. Maybe other than Malik Neighbors. Like Jordan Tyson's legit, dude. 6'2", 200. He can do everything. You know, he can catch everything. He can do everything. He can play every position. He reminds me a lot of a bigger Justin Jefferson. You know, where he can align all over the field. He's going to be a guy that you're going to want to put two, you're going to want to bracket and double up. Just really, really good. Carnell Tate at Ohio State's another guy. You know, Ohio State's been pumping out receivers left and right, over the past, 5, 6, 7 years. And Carnell Tate is just another guy that just comes in here and steps in. I think his ceiling might be wide receiver 2. I don't know if he ever takes a step to be an alpha. But in fairness, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? There's good wide receiver 2s that T. Higgins is the wide receiver 2. The kid in Tampa, who's the guy who just got coming back from the injury? Not Mike
Godwin.
Evans, huh?
Godwin?
Godwin, yeah. I mean, Chris Godwin carved a really good career. He's been a top 20 receiver for pretty much his entire career, being wide receiver 2. So, Carnell Tate's got a lot of that in him. He's another guy I think can probably take on a couple pounds. And then you decide where you want to place him. If you want to play him at the Z, if you want to play him in the slot, I think he can do a lot of things there. Who's the other kid that I'm thinking of that I like? Oh, Texas A&M transfer from NC State, Casey Concepcion. He's a slot dominant guy, but man, is he fucking good. You talk about like fast twitch, jitterbug, the route running, the route running that can go on for days, the ability to create space and get open, and then the speed to boot, man. Like Casey Concepcion is going to be a player in the league for a long time. Now he's a little bit undersized. He's 5'11", 185, 190 pounds. So he might just be, slot only at the next level. And for the Jets, I don't think that, now that Malachi Corley is gone, who you tell me who's the slot receiver of the future? It ain't Alan Lazard, right?
I hope not.
Is it going to be the little that little bugger who returns punts on our practice squad?
Pritchett.
Pritchett, yeah. Is he going to be your slot receiver of the future? I don't know, man.
No, man. No.
No,
You know what? You know what
Thank
I
God
would
it's not
like?
like Xavier Gibson.
I would like 2 big X's and then Garrett slide inside, bro.
Yeah,
But,
I'd be fine with that too.
Hey, question here from Chris B. Thoughts about Denzel Boston?
Yeah, Washington receiver. Again, you talk about that prototypical X. I mean, he's 6'5", 220, 240. He moves that way. He's he defines possession receiver. Super strong hands, long strider, not very quick. But gonna win all those contested catches. Gonna go up the ball. It's gonna be a red zone. A red zone fucking whore. That guy. He's gonna be one of those guys you just, gets ball, takes ball, throws it up, throws ball up. Catch ball. Not gonna win a lot of relay races or track meets during the field. doesn't really have that third gear. Needs a lot of refinement in terms of route running. Everything's rounded or pretty simplistic. But you need to throw the ball up to a tall guy with 34-inch arms and 12-inch hands who can catch it. Denzel Boston's your guy. I have him right now probably as a day, like a mid to late day 2 guy. So that's like late round 2, early round 3. And again, things can change, but if you locked in like a guy like that, if he somehow slipped to the 4th round, I think take it, considering, and I'm assuming the Jets are picking within the first 5 picks of each round, right? Their own pick. So it's probably a little too rich for my blood to go in round 2, but it'll be an absolute steal in round 4. And I don't think he'd get there. You know what I mean?
Dom, that's oh my God, I don't know how you keep all this information in your brain. Like, wait, who was that receiver again? What was he? Oh my God, it's incredible, great work as always.
Yeah.
I did want to take a step back from this upcoming class, and maybe just like what are we, like a third of the way through the season? You want to give me a vibe check on our 2025 haul?
Yeah.
How you feeling about it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can sleep comfortably knowing that Armand Membu is going to be your right tackle for the next 10 years. He was not my number 1 rated tackle in the class. Full disclosure. I call it like I see it and can admit when I was wrong, and I had him as my 3rd or 4th tackle in the class. I thought that he would struggle a lot more in pass pro than he has. So I think we could sleep pretty knowing that we got this 21-year-old, just like pure ass kicker at right tackle for the next 10 to 12 years. That's good. I'm feeling very good. I'm not going to say I'm sleeping pretty, but I'm feeling very good right now with Mason Taylor. That's my tight end. And I might be saying I'm sleeping, nice and snug with Mason Taylor as my tight end if I knew that the quarterback was going to be able to get him the ball, but what we've asked him to do, he's turned into pretty much the second weapon on the offense, which isn't saying much for a Justin Fields led offense, but you'd like to see him. He's catching everything that's thrown to him. You'd like to see him create a little bit more yak. That hasn't been the case. He's usually catching and getting hit or catching and falling down. You'd like to see him improve his one-on-one blocking a little bit, but with rookie quarterbacks, that's or rookie tight ends, not quarterbacks. Rookie tight ends, that's probably the last thing that's going to come about. So I think that you have something good in Mason Taylor. I'll leave it at that. AZ Thomas I talked about before, that's still, yet to be determined, but, the future is bright in my opinion. Arian Smith, I think you could say the same thing. It's kind of, it's hard to give a game, it's hard to, get a vibe check or do anything in regards to that because he just hasn't seen the ball all much, and then your 5th round picks, and I'll group them all together. Barron has disappointed, you hope that he figures something out and gets stronger or picks up a specific skill set to really take the next level, because right now he looks a little bit overmatched. Kiko Mayanoa has really come on over the past couple games, and I think he epitomizes what a 5th round pick should be, where it's going to be a little bit of a struggle at first, but he's going to figure everything out. I think he's playing pretty good linebacker, and then Malachi Moore's been fine. I didn't like Malachi Moore in the slot the other day where they had him in Dallas. I thought he was outmatched, outclassed as a slot receiver. Man coverage and speed is not his forte. His forte is playing in space and fitting the run and playing downhill and being disruptive, and I think they now see what he's about, and he's replaced Tony Adams as a starting strong safety on this defense. So, that says a lot. So that's in a nutshell, that's our class.
Okay. So not too bad of a swing for our guy Muji in his first go around. So far, it's seeming we're still early in the season. I know Mimbu. I mean that first game against the Steelers, TJ Watt getting kind of shut down a little bit. That was like, whoa! Everybody's like, all right, pump the brakes a little bit. We're not going to label him elite yet, but the kid looks like he belongs on the field, and that's all we can ask out of a rookie, right?
Yes, agreed.
And we'll see as time goes on when these guys get more snaps and stuff. But I'm not out on the draft, especially. You got to consider, does Muji even have his own scouting staff in there? I mean, like he's probably banking off of the guys that were already here and stuff, and just trying to do what he can. So I don't know. Now that he's going to have a full off season this next year, I'm excited to see how that turns out. But yeah, there was one player in the 26th draft I wanted to ask you about, and it's only because of the duck head over there. I was looking at Mel Kiper dropped his first big board, right? So I took a glance at the top 25 because I just like to get an idea of some names to watch out for. And one of the ones, there's a couple of them that popped out. One of the ones, and you mentioned him earlier, and this is a guy that I'm really going to start looking into, is the Arizona State wide receiver. I forgot his name.
Jordan Tyson.
Yeah,
Jordan Tyson. Yes, sir.
He had him very high. I think he had him as the first receiver. So I'm definitely going to try to watch some, Arizona State games and get a vibe check on him and stuff. But somebody that I noticed that I was not expecting at all, and I haven't watched a ton of Oregon games this year. I watched a little bit of that Indiana game and stuff, but he had the tight end from Oregon at his 14th spot on his big board. Is that
Kenyon Sadiq.
Is that the next Tyler Warren?
Yeah, he's a he's a really, really good prospect. Kenyon Sadiq. I think, he's not Tyler Warren. He doesn't have the physical makeup of Tyler Warren. I think he's only 6'3", 240, something around there. 235, 240. But yeah, like you're talking about a really highly recruited, 5-star athlete. From the Northwest. I think he's from Idaho, Montana, something, something weird there, but this is really the first time that he's gotten to step on the field. He played in all the games last year, but he took kind of like a backseat to Terrence Ferguson, right? But you're talking a guy that, when you think about, and this is not a comparison, so don't put it that way, but you think back of all the tight ends that we've seen in the past that kind of, can just like explode up the seams. You're talking like, what's the guy? Oh my God, why can't I think of? I'm so bad with names today. He's in Pittsburgh now. He was in Miami last year. He was in Atlanta the year before that.
Jonnu Smith,
right? You're thinking Jonnu Smith. You're thinking Aaron Hernandez. The guys that when they can just, Evan Engram in his prime, when they can just kind of step and set and then like turn it vertically, like 0 to 60 like that, and get up the seams and be that. Like, that's Kenyon Sadiq. He's great. He's got good hands. He's even better under the cat. He's even better with like under duress. He's super, super strong, converted receiver, so he plays like it. He just plays like a really, really a big receiver, and I think that helps him a lot. Explosive as could be for a guy at 235, 240 pounds. I think there's kind of, he's kind of undersized for NFL standards to play in line, but if you put him in the right offense, You put him in a Jacksonville offense where, in place of like the Brenton Strange role, or you put him in, Sean Payton's offense, as the Joker in in Evan Ingram's role, or you put him in Kansas City in that offense in the Travis Kelce role. Like, you got a real receiving threat here. Could get stronger. Don't know if he's got the chops to really block in line. But at worst, you got like a faster, more athletic Harold Fannin at the helm. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Kenyon Sadiq goes in the first half of round 1.
Dude, Fannin is a weapon, man. All over their field in Cleveland,
Yeah.
making plays. Fantastic, man. Shout out Lee John.
Yeah, that's his guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dom, I think we're winding down here. I
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to ask you though, like, we got what, 2-3 weeks, and one of those is a bye week. Gun to your head right now, and don't come at me, YouTube, for that. But like, who are you selling on, if anyone, in the next 3 weeks?
I think the right thing. I mean, I think the chalk thing to say is anyone who's not bolted down, right? Any of your expired contracts. That's the chalk thing to say. I don't think that this team, this organization, this regime wants to do that. If I had to guess, I'll give you one on offense and one on defense. How's that? I'll say, like, willingly and happily for both ends. I think Alan Lazard will be one that you're selling, that you're getting rid of on the offensive side of the ball. And I'd probably say, if he proves healthy, I'd probably say Quincy Williams, because I don't think that he's coming back next year whatsoever. I don't think that the Jets are going to be in a position, because they have so many holes and so many free agents that they're going to have to sign. I don't think they're going to be in a position to qualify for comp picks for 2027. So, and I don't think you necessarily need Quincy Williams. Like, Quincy Williams has been replaced by a young kid who you want to develop and look at, especially in the lost season. So I think you can kind of maximize and get everything you can out of Quincy Williams. And I will say the dark horse, for me, it's not going to be Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall either stays and is franchised or extended, or he stays and you just gotta ride it out. Like, if Braylon Allen was healthy, maybe I'd think differently, but I don't. I think the sneaky one could be Michael Carter the second. They could look to get rid of that, knowing that Jarvis Brownlee's here and might be here to stay as the slot cornerback for the Jets.
That breaks my heart because I was a big MC2 guy.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and listen, he earned our respect. He hasn't been the same since that back injury.
Yeah.
Just the reality. Sorry, bud. Like, he's made millions. He signed a second contract. He's good. His family's good. His kids are good. Yeah. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Dom, good
Yes, sir.
shit. Final question. I gotta know, because I'm sitting here and I'm forecasting Sunday. Excuse me, got a lifesaver in.
All good.
Forecasting my thoughts, my demeanor, my mentality Sunday. Talk me off a ledge. On Sunday, am I going to be wishing that we pursued Morgan Moses and drafted T-Mac instead of letting Morgan walk and taking Membu?
No, I don't think so. Because and the one reason why I say I don't think you should regret that. Not only do I think that Membu's been very good, because he's been very good. But this might be the worst tackle class that I can remember ever delving into in scouting. So you'd have to look for a replacement here for the aging, whatever the fuck his name is again. And
Moses.
the aging Moses. And
35.
And people got to remember also, it's not only like we have our two tackles, hopefully bookend barring injury. We have a backup in Isapole, but we're still gonna need another backup, right? So now you don't have to force a peg. You can just kind of take a backup tackle, a developmental tackle on day 3, and check those boxes. You don't have to force anything. And this tackle class is not one that you want to force with. Like, I don't think I have a tackle in my top 25.
Good. Thank you, because that'll help my mentality on Sunday. When I see another 9 sacks and corners getting beat. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Hey, before we let you go, Dom, I know you're plugged into certain places. Why don't you
Yes.
tell the audience, whether they're watching now, later, 6 months from now, where we can find you, what you're working on?
You can always catch me live on Mondays with Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7 on the Talking Jets Network. We're there commiserating, wiping tears for all the Jets fans on Monday nights for the most part. So that's 8 to 9 or 8:15 to 9:15. Really depends on when kids are going to sleep. Sometimes it's 8, sometimes 8:15. That's the story of life. You can find all my draft content in written form on Jet X Factor. That'll be the hub and kind of the location where all of my written in-depth scouting reports will be available. That'll be the database. And then obviously my own personal YouTube channel, which really is kind of dormant for it'll start picking up now, probably not November, and it'll probably die out again probably about May. But we're going to be doing a lot more, not just Jets, but draft related stuff through there. A lot of good guests and all the videos that I normally put out, all the mock drafts and stuff like that. So if you need your draft fix, you can always catch it on YouTube at Project Prospect with DomC. And if you're more of a guy that likes to sit and read, all my long form scouting reports will be produced, and that content will be through Jet X Factor. And I have one coming up. You'll see it this weekend on Lenore Sellers, and if he's worthy of the 1.1.
I don't know if Murph remembers it, but like 2 or 3 months ago, I made just a one-off comment of, I don't know how Dom C and X Factor aren't married yet, and then boom, boom,
Yeah,
marriage.
yeah,
Like
yeah. It works.
Connor,
Listen, it works out well. It's a good group of guys over there, man. Everyone's cool. Everyone's kind of got their own little thing and their own little niche, and it seems to work, man.
hey man, we over here, at least I can't speak for everyone. Over here, we love your content, man. You plugged me into a few new guys I'll be watching. You've been talking Mendoza long before I've ever heard of him. And that's not a long time, but it's still sooner than I expected. So appreciate you. Appreciate the convo tonight, Murph. Anything to add?
No, yeah, we just appreciate the shit out of you, Dom. Sorry. Every time you come on, I come away knowing way more than I did whenever before you came on. Uh, just name dropping guys and getting me like, okay, these are the guys I need to watch and stuff like that. That helps, man. That helps, especially like Saturday. I'm like trying to choose like what game am I going to watch?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
WVU's not playing or they're getting their asses spanked like they've been doing all season. What game I'm going to watch? Well, Tyson there with Arizona State's playing.
Yeah.
Let's go check this guy out. Like things like that. Like it helps with me choosing my games on Saturdays too, which what to watch and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey, listen. I'll say this: if you're coming to that point, you got South Carolina playing Oklahoma this weekend, right? So you get Mateer versus Sellers.
yeah,
Should be interesting. At least it'll be fun. It'll be two guys that at the quarterback position that are going to go mano a mano. That a lot of Jets fans will be talking about over the next 5-6 months, 4 months, 4 or 5 months. So
Yeah, yeah. And chat's loving it too, man. A lot of appreciation for you in the chat, Dom.
you guys listen, man. You guys do it right. I'm not only a supporter of both y'all, but I'm a big fan. So even when I'm not on the show, I'm always in the chat and always watching. So keep doing your thing, guys.
Hey,
Fucking
have
kill
a
it.
good night, Dom.
All right, guys. Later. Thank you.
Later.
Good night, Dom.
Later, bro.
What a guy.
Love me some DomC, man. Year round.